It is time for non-fiction November, and so I thought I'd pull out some of my favourite non-fiction books and recommend them. I have a really big stack, I can't hold them all. So I've separated these up into sections. They will be in the timestamps below so you can skip to the sections that interest you. And let's just dive in, because I don't know what else to do with this ridiculous number. My first section is books about history. So I have 3 books here that are kind of related, also kind of separate. First up is Pompeii by Mary Beard. This is obviously a book all about Pompeii, about how the people actually lived during this time and the findings that we've had. This is really well written, really enjoyable. I read through it much faster than I was expecting to. I can't recommend this enough if you are interested in the ancient Romans, because Pompeii is of course a great site of preservation of all that they were doing at this time, and Beard goes into so much depth. She is a fantastic historian. Then we have The Earth Transformed by Peter Frankopan, which I bought because of this edge, and this edge only, and yet I adored this so much. This is, as it says, a history of the Earth, going from the dawn of time, which is 4.5 billion BC, all the way up until the modern day. It talks about how humans across time have had an impact on the environment, and also how the humans have had impacts on themselves. It is just beautifully done. It is a very in-depth book, I'm not gonna lie. I sat here with the audiobook and reading it to get through this one. It is deep, it is dense, but I have to recommend it because it's so well done. Then there is Missing Thread by Daisy Dunn. This is a history of ancient Greece and ancient Rome that actually includes women in it. I say includes specifically because it's not looking to overwrite the history and only include the females. This will give you an oversight of Greek and Roman history without needing to read any other book, but it also just actually includes the women that had impact in this time. Yes, women were very much subjugated, but additionally they did have sway over their partners and their children and their husbands and whoever else, and so it actually includes this sway and how this may have impacted quite large events that occurred in both of these ancient histories. This is really well written, really engrossing. Really recommend. Obviously I recommend every single book in this stack. Then we have the science section. So I tried to actually genuinely stick to books that I think that other people will enjoy. I have a very niche interest. But first up we have the only human body based one. This is Immune by Philip Detmer, the man who created Kurzgesagt, the YouTube channel that you've most likely seen. And this book, oh, there's a sticker. This book is filled with gorgeous illustrations in the same style as, of course, the Kurzgesagt videos, and is just a fantastic breakdown of the human immune system, and is just so educational and really well done. You can hear the narrator from the Kurzgesagt English language videos as you read this. It's fantastic. And then the other 3 science ones are all environmental. So, Owls of the Eastern Ice by Jonathan Slott. I know this sounds specific, but it's actually, oh, it's so good. So this is a mixture of a memoir, an adventure story, and a scientific research non-fiction. This American man moves to Russia and learns Russian and is exploring the Eastern Russian wilderness, and he's doing so in order to learn more about these owls specifically that are very under-researched. It is so interesting seeing the information about the environment, the information about the owls, learning more about his interactions with people in Russian culture in these remote parts. This was also in the 90s, so even more remote than it would be today. It's just written so well and is so engrossing, and I couldn't put it down. Like, I know it seems niche, but I promise. Underrated. Of course there's a book about volcanoes, it's my channel. Super Volcanoes by Robin George Andrews is genuinely the most engaging volcanology book I have ever read. It is funny, it is well written, it is fast paced, it is educational, it doesn't talk down, but nor is it too complicated. This, as well as being absolutely gorgeous on your shelves, is a fantastic book to be introduced to more details about volcanology and about volcanoes. I adore this so much, and I can't recommend this one. Like, please just also, like, look at it on your shelves. And then the final sciencey one, of course I had to include David Attenborough. This is Living Planet, The Web of Life on Earth. To be honest, this is just a stand-in for any Attenborough. His books are absolutely fantastic. This is an updated version of one that originally released in the 80s, and the research that goes into them, the sources, of course there's footage, but there's photos included that you may remember if you've seen them from his documentaries. This is just as good as his documentaries, but in the written form, and it's just... Then I kind of have a section that's just like dealing with oppression. So let's start with LGBTQ plus oppression. The Transgender Issue by Shauna Fay. This is one of the best non-fictions I've ever read. I listened to this on audiobook whilst reading it physically. It is so well done. The research into it is incredible. Shauna Fay themselves is transgender, but she is a white British woman, and she actually includes, as much as she can and through talking with others, information about being transgender when you are disabled, when you are non-white, when you are poor, and how all of those, as well as some other impacts, then change how difficult it is to be transgender in today's society. This is the book, in my opinion, on transgender issues. It is brilliantly done. 5 stars, 5 stars. Then there is Fabulosa by Paul Baker, and this is the story of Polari, which is essentially the secret gay language that used to be used. There are some words of it that have snuck into modern day English, but essentially this was a secret language that was used back in the day, I want to say till like the 80s, like pre-internet, when being gay, especially in the UK, was illegal. And so if you were trying to speak with people, you would want to use language that only they would know if they were in the community, and it's how this language evolved, it's the etymology of the language and how it impacted people. Really, really interesting. Then I only have one on colonialism. I clearly need to read more, but this is a kid's book, Stolen History by Sathnan Sangera. This is fantastic. I need to read more kids non-fictions because the amount I learnt from this children's non-fiction is concerning. This is so good. Obviously it's for kids, so it's very engaging, very fast-paced. It doesn't talk down, but it also educates you from the basics upwards. This is brilliantly done, and it's made me want to read Empireland, which is the adult book from the same author. It is surprisingly non-biased. I wouldn't be able to be this non-biased about the Empire, and I'm white. Like, I'm very impressed with this. But yes, in this short little book that's only like just under 200 pages, it captures the essence of everything and taught me a lot. Then for the feminism section, so we have The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. This is a book about the 5 women who were murdered by Jack the Ripper and their lives and their histories. So we often just hear them referred to by these nicknames and in relation to Jack the Ripper, but this one actually delves into their history. Hallie Rubenhold has gone back and found out where these women were originally from. Most of them weren't from London, and how they ended up to be living in this area. The murderer was skulking around and looking for targets, and how they were living their lives, what their struggles were. Then it also tells you more about the life of day-to-day women at this time period. It is incredibly well researched. The Patriarchs by Angela Saini. This one I was expecting to be men bashing and saying how patriarchy is awful. And it is, but it also isn't. This one is also talking about how patriarchy is bad for men, how it came about, where the matriarchal societies are and how they've developed. It is just a genuinely very well researched look into how the patriarchy became the predominant method over the globe. I've read other books from Angela Saini before, and I think that their research is absolutely fantastic. She is wonderful. But the last of the oppression section is 2 books that are specifically about Black history. First up is Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. I know this is a big book, okay, but I tabbed up each chapter. I read all of these in one day because I couldn't put it down. Mandela writes very well. It is very engaging. You find out from his early years, from his childhood, all the way up to his release from prison. This is so well written and really encompasses the history of South Africa during the apartheid incredibly well. It's just like, I read this much in one day. I couldn't put it down. What's that, like 500 pages? It was so good. And then one that is quite new to me, but I love it, and that is Black History for Every Day of the Year by David Olusoga, Yinka Olusoga and Kemi Olusoga. This is what it says. Each and every day of the calendar year has a different fact about Black history. So of course, I am still reading through this. I only got it recently and it's going to be a very slow one. It should take me 365 days. and I'm really looking forward to reading through this. What I've read so far has already been both enlightening and adding richness to already present knowledge. I think books like this are really important because they allow you to learn a small amount each and every day of information that realistically we should have already known. A lot of these people have had huge impacts on the globe as to their actions, whether that is freeing enslaved people or whether that is scientific endeavours that have just not been recognised. So I am very excited to make my way through this. It's going to take me 365 days because I'm going to do it properly, and I'm just looking forward to picking this up each and every day. And then the last section is memoirs. Technically I could have included Long Walk to Freedom in this section, but I feel like there's so much in this that it tells you so much more about the history of South Africa. But related to that, and something that does tell you more about the more modern South Africa, although of course it is still historical, is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. This is a man who was born to a white father and a black mother, which was illegal at the time in South Africa. And if you don't know, he is a well-known comedian now in the United States, and this is just a really engaging... Orange is funny. I don't know if you can see. This is a really engaging, really fun book. My only negative from it is that the timeline isn't actually linear, so we do chop back and forth a little bit, and I did find that a little bit off-putting. It threw me off slightly, but I read this at the same time as I read Long Walk to Freedom, and reading them side by side was fascinating, but a very fun memoir. This one is not fun, unfortunately, but is very well written, and that is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is the woman who was sexually assaulted on Stanford campus and what she went through. So it starts off just beforehand, kind of explaining where her life was at. It tells you about the process that she went through when she was going through the police custody, etc., to tell them all about what happened, and how this essentially ruined her life for years afterward, whilst he just got to carry on living his life. This is hard-hitting, very well written, and not an easy read, but if it's something that you can handle, I really recommend it. Speaking of women that have went through shit, Malala Yousafzai. I am Malala. If you don't know, Malala as a child was advocating for women's education in Pakistan, and the Taliban took a disliking to her for that and her proud stance and shot her in the head as a child. She then was sent to the UK, was given the best medical treatment that we could, and she survived. She has since graduated from Oxford University, is a strong, intelligent woman, still doing work for women's education and girls' education, and this is her memoir from a point where she was still a teenager, talking about everything that she had done. She is inspirational. One that you may have read because the hype around it was huge when it came out, and that is I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is one of the stars of iCarly, which was a very popular kids show in the noughts, which I happened to love. It talks about how Jeanette was forced into the child entertainment industry, the issues that she had with religion, with her mother who had mental illness, with growing up in poverty, and with the manipulation that was done to her by her mother. It is, in my opinion, a really easy read, really enjoyable to read, and quite enlightening about modern childhood in Hollywood. We hear a lot about, you know, back in the day, even Drew Barrymore was a little while ago now, and whilst Jeanette is not youthful, it still does enlighten us to some of the more modern practices. I say not youthful, she's like a couple of years older than me, you know what I mean, she's not a child anymore. And then my final recommendation is Becoming by Michelle Obama. This memoir discusses Michelle's life from her childhood up until, I think, at the end of the first term of Barack Obama being in office, but it discusses her. When I picked it up I thought it might be like a bit about her childhood and then, oh look, presidential stuff, but it really focuses on her, and I really enjoyed that. She obviously tried to use her office as FLOTUS for good and to have as much impact as possible. Seeing that and seeing her background, her amazing level of education, her power and her drive was really interesting, and also the way that she speaks in this novel, and she also narrates the audiobook herself, which I listened to, is fantastic. Honestly. I'm like going on about how amazing all these books are, but there's a reason I'm recommending them. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Well, that's annoying. That is 19 non-fiction books that I recommend. Hopefully something... I'm so tempted to pick up another book. Do I need another one? I mean, there's so many that I enjoy, but like, I'm trying to find ones that you'll actually, like, love. Like, there's ones I love. That doesn't mean you'll love them. Regardless, let me know down in the comments below, are you picking up anything for non-fiction November? Have you read any of these? I do hope that something out of these categories sparks some interest for you and that you are able to pick something up and really enjoy it this month. Thank you so much for watching, folks, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!